teeth.
It's in my mouth!
You get a bullet? You get a bullet?
Big bullet coming!
Start getting it out! To get it out! I'll say yes!
Borderlands is the new big summer blockbuster video game adaptation film directed by Eli Roth. The movie has a big ensemble cast of Guardians of the Galaxy style characters, but we'll mention 4 of the main cast members here, and that would be Cate Blanchett, Kevin Hart, Jack Black, and Jamie Lee Curtis. And with a big group of names like that, just to start out, you would think, okay, well, at least this is going to have the star power. 2 of those 4 people can be really funny, so at least we'll get that. But that's not really what you get. I'll get into my positive negatives in a little bit. Let's get into the synopsis of this film. This isn't going to be a full play-by-play of the entire movie, but I do feel like I have to give you a big chunk of the setup of this film in order to get to my positives and negatives. So we'll start with the character of Tiny Tina, played by Ariana Greenblatt. She is stuck in a prison at the beginning of this film, and Kevin Hart's character comes and breaks her out. Now keep in mind, Kevin Hart should be one of the funny men. He's not one of the funny men in this movie. He's a very serious military guy, and he breaks her out of this prison, and then as they're trying to leave, they get stopped by a big monster named Krieg. But as it turns out, this monster has a heart of gold, and he scoops up the girl, and he, along with Kevin Hart, get off of this blown up prison spaceship thing and get onto a new spaceship to go away. Here's the thing, I'll get into my negatives in a little bit, but right off the bat in this film, there is no setup for their relationship. He just storms through this door, kills a couple of guards, and then he's just like, I might be a monster, but I'm really nice. And he doesn't even say that. So again, as the audience member, I'm already off to a rocky start here, because I'm like, all right, why is he being so nice to them? But he scoops her up, they leave. Now, while that's going on the other side of things, you have Cate Blanchett's character. And Cate Blanchett plays Lilith, who is a bounty hunter, and she is working on one of her bounty hunter jobs right now when she gets approached by a man named Atlas and a bunch of his gangsters. They approach her, and Atlas tells her that his little girl, that would be Tiny Tina from earlier in the film, has been kidnapped, and he needs someone of her style bounty hunter abilities to go and save this Tiny Tina girl. Cate Blanchett doesn't want to do it, but then after a little bit of negotiations and some death, she's like, all right, I'll go do it. So she packs up her stuff and then goes to look for Tiny Tina. Final setup I'll give for this movie is that she does meet up with this band of misfits, but quickly finds out that they are the good guys and that Atlas and the other guys are the bad guys in this film. And so she now joins them along with Claptrap, a little robot on one wheel played by Jack Black, and Dr. Patricia Tannis, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. And there you go. That's your entire group of people that are the Guardians of the Galaxy style ripoff characters. And listen, it may sound right off the bat that I wasn't a big fan of this movie, and I wasn't. I'm not trying to deter you from seeing this movie, though. If you think that's a good setup for a film, maybe you're a big Borderlands fan, maybe you love the video game and you've got to see this movie, well, it's playing in theaters now and you should go check this thing out. Support it in theaters if you're that big of a fan of the entire IP. But that said, let's get into my positives and some of my negatives. Now, the only real positive that I have for this film would be the soundtrack, and that is because this movie emulates Guardians of the Galaxy in many ways. Now, you could probably count the times that I reference Guardians of the Galaxy in this film, but that is truly what this movie feels like it's trying to be. Even if that wasn't their intention, which I wouldn't believe, they really try to be Guardians of the Galaxy in every way, and it really shows in the soundtrack. And here's the thing, when you put a bunch of really catchy, fun songs in a soundtrack, that's going to be a positive. I can't fault the movie for that. I can't say, oh, well, you know, they did use good music. That sucks. It doesn't. So the music in this movie or the soundtrack in this film, that is a lot of fun, and I'm not going to take that away from the movie. But that is where my positives end, and now we get into my negatives. The first negative I have for this movie is going to be the action scenes are a big CGI mess. And what I mean by that is that all of the action scenes in this movie, or really just any of the scenes in this movie, feel like they're on a soundstage with a ton of CGI surrounding them. None of the scenes in this movie, especially the ones that are supposed to take place on these distant planets and these cool space scenes and with things going around above them, all of them feel hollow. They all just look like big green screen CGI sets. Nothing feels solid, and it's just weird to watch. Like, you're watching this movie, you're just like, oh, well, you kind of look like you're on a sound set. And we'll get to a little bit more of that in a minute with another negative that I have, but that is the fact. This movie, it just feels very hollow. The CGI looks messy, and when they're fighting things on a big battlefield, like there's this one moment where they're jumping this big ramp and they're going through this big monster. It's in the trailer, but it doesn't look very good. And when it happens in the movie, you're just kind of like, that looked fake. It just, I mean, of course it looks fake. There's not really a big monster like that, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look clean. The next negative I have is that this movie turns into a big treasure hunting adventure film. And that's not something I put in the synopsis. But after Lilith finds out that the good guys are actually the band of misfits and that the bad guys are actually Atlas and she joins forces with them, the movie has to go somewhere. So it becomes a treasure hunting adventure film. And again, maybe you would know that if you're part of the video game world. Maybe that is a big piece of the video game, is finding this big vault that everybody is currently looking for, including the bad guys, including the good guys, including just about everybody else in this movie. Everyone's searching for this thing called the vault, and the vault has vast treasures in it from an old alien civilization. And so this movie becomes a treasure hunting adventure film, and somehow they made a treasure hunting adventure film not fun. And that blows my mind. Like, how do you make a treasure hunting adventure film where you have to go find these different keys, sort of like a video game would have you go find these different keys, and it's just not interesting. It's not fun. It's not exciting. There's not big set piece moments in this film where you're like, whoa, I can't believe they went and did that to get the key. That wasn't even the final mission, but that's what we got in this moment. Okay, what's going to happen next? There's nothing like that. No set pieces in this film feel big enough to be part of a big treasure hunting, planet hopping adventure film. There's two more negatives I have. The first one is the emotional impact. I didn't feel it. Like, this is supposed to be a big band of misfits that are all coming together. And again, I've referenced Guardians of the Galaxy because Guardians of the Galaxy found a way to organically make it feel like they all had an emotional attachment to each other by the end of the film. There's that moment in the first Guardians movie where they're all sitting around defeated and they all start giving big speeches, and then Rocket stands up and goes, so here we are, all standing like a bunch of assholes. There was never a moment like that where you had this emotional pull of all the characters banding together and maybe somebody making quick quips where you're like, oh, all right, that's fun. That ties the audience together. Now we're all in this together. Let's go get them. Like, it never felt like that in this movie. There's one moment they try to give you this big emotional scene between Lilith and between Dr. Patricia Tannis. They're both sitting there, and for those of you who maybe are not keeping up, that would be Cate Blanchett and Jamie Lee Curtis. Two people that can act and should be able to give you an emotional scene. And I guess the deal with this film is that Lilith was left behind under Dr. Patricia Tannis's care, and she went away to look for the treasure, and so they've been separated from each other for such a long time that they now have beef with each other. But they try to break the ice. Jamie Lee Curtis is like, hey, I'm sorry about what's going on here. And they try to have this emotional moment, something that's going to bring them together and make them stronger to then go fight the bad guys. And the first issue I take with that is that it's just between those two characters. But fine, if you need some character development for the Lilith character to kind of get to her final form later in the film, fine, you need that emotional impact from somebody. But you just don't feel that emotion as an audience member. In fact, watching this film, I was like, are you two on two different sets while filming this? And I could be wrong. Maybe they were sitting right there together, but they didn't seem to have any chemistry with each other. And that's something I could say for this entire cast. Nobody in this film feels like they have chemistry with each other. They're all kind of doing their own thing. They're all going crazy, doing something for themselves. They're all yelling at each other, but at no point did it emotionally connect where you're like, okay, they're yelling at each other, but they're yelling at each other like siblings would yell at each other because they really do love each other at the end of the day and they want to keep each other together. No, throughout this movie, they're betraying each other. They're mad at each other, and at no point did you feel an emotional connection. And the biggest thing I can give you to show that would be that one conversation between Cate Blanchett and between Jamie Lee Curtis, because the two of them are supposed to have this heartfelt moment, and it just feels hollow. Again, like the action CGI scenes, it just feels hollow. So the emotions didn't work for me, but then we get to my next negative, which would be the comedy in this film. And the comedy in this film is basically non-existent. I don't know who they wrote the comedy dialogue for in this film, because going into this movie, watching the trailers beforehand, I kind of felt like, all right, this movie is probably going to appeal to a younger audience, maybe kids between 8 and 10, maybe the young TikTok or Fortnite crowd. Maybe that's who they're going to try and appeal to. And it does feel like they're trying to appeal to them, but even that didn't land in the theater that I was in, because I'm in a theater with at least 30 to 40 people, and a bunch of those people were kids in that range, parents who had brought their kids. And I'm sitting here when I walked in thinking, oh, maybe this is one I should have waited on, maybe brought my 9-year-old son, like maybe he would have enjoyed this film. And my theater, I'm not kidding, didn't laugh one time. There wasn't one moment between Kevin Hart or Jack Black, the two that should probably be the funniest in your film, since you cast two very funny people in your film. neither one of them made the audience laugh, not even once. There wasn't one moment in this film where somebody was like, ha, well, that was kind of good. No, nothing. There was none of that throughout this movie, especially as Jack Black's character of Claptrap, this little robot, as he continued through this film, he just got more and more annoying, just gratingly, obnoxiously annoying. He was one of the worst aspects of this entire film. He shows up and he's kind of weird and zany, and you're like, okay, that's the vibe they're going for this character. I'm sure he'll have a few moments of dialogue in this film that really hit at the right time. No, not at all. They go for the humor like, well, here's this hole we have to go down and there's a ladder. Let's see how far down it is. And they just push the robot. And it's like, oh, that's supposed to be funny, but it's not. And then one of the worst scenes of the entire movie is, I guess, the crazy people that Krieg is part of. And again, I don't know any of the video game lore, so fill me in the comment section. But they all live down below in this hole. So as they go down there to look for one of the keys, they have to create a distraction. And so they send the Jack Black robot in to create a distraction. And you think, okay, this might be funny because he could literally say anything to these guys to piss them off, right? So what's he going to say? And he calls them poo-poo face. And that works, to be clear, that works. These big, strong, disgusting looking monsters turn around, they all get their guns out, they start pointing at him because he called them poo-poo face. I'm not kidding, that's in this movie. And then they start to unload about 1 million rounds into him. And of course, nothing bad can happen to him because he's one of the main ensemble characters, so he just gets filled with lead while the other characters from the Borderlands gang are sort of getting around the bad guys. Okay, so that scene ends, and they go find this key, and they're like, all right, we got it, now we just got to get out of here silently. And at that point, here's Jack Black again, ready to make another funny thing happen. So the robot rolls up, and he's like, oh no, I have to expel all of this lead from me. And he starts basically pooping out all of the bullets that were shot into him. I don't even know how those mechanics work within a robot, but he starts, this little tiny back flap opens, and all of these bullets start pouring out of him. And they make jokes like, that's disgusting. Can you do that later? And he's like, oh, why do you have to watch me expel these? And it's just like, is this the comedy they came up with? This is the best they could do. I look back again to Guardians of the Galaxy, where you have Groot, a tree character that can only say 3 words. I am Groot, in that specific order. And that tree character got more laughs with a smirk on his face at the end of Guardians 1 than Jack Black's Claptrap character got in this entire film. I mean it. There's not one moment of Jack Black's dialogue in this movie that made you laugh. It's just obnoxious, and you're just like, why is this continue? It's like a little tiny, like if you had a little tiny kid in your house who was just obnoxious all day, and you're like, yeah, let's bring him along for the mission. I'm sure at some point he'll be useful. Just ridiculous. Now, I know I've mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy several times in this review, and I'm going to mention them one more time here, and that is that my next negative is that this is so much so the Guardians of the Galaxy ripoff that you could even kind of look at the characters and figure out who's supposed to be who. Krieg is supposed to be Drax in this movie. Kevin Hart's character is supposed to be Star-Lord. You've got Cate Blanchett is probably supposed to be Gamora. The little girl playing Tiny Tina, that's supposed to be Rocket Raccoon. And then, of course, Jack Black is maybe Groot, but again, none of those characters actually work in the way that you want them to work in this film. You have this ensemble cast like Guardians of the Galaxy had. You got this group of misfits like Guardians of the Galaxy had. You find out that they're actually the good guys like Guardians of the Galaxy. You find out they're the ones that can save the galaxy like Guardians of the Galaxy. And yet somehow they put all of these characters together. They lose all of the fun dialogue that Guardians had. They lose all of the fun action scenes that Guardians of the Galaxy had. And yet Guardians of the Galaxy is able to do a stupid dance-off to end their film, and it has more emotional impact than the entirety of Borderlands. And that is one of my biggest issues with this film, is that you've got this huge Borderlands video game community that probably would come out for this film, go watch this movie, go enjoy this movie, and yet here we are, they give us this. And the last thing I'll say about this film is that I've never played the Borderlands video game, but this movie doesn't make me want to do it. Shouldn't the video game adaptation film still want to make me pick up a controller and play the video game? Like, shouldn't that be, like, they looked at Eli Roth at the beginning of the day and they're like, listen, do what you want with this movie, make it Guardians of the Galaxy style, but at the end of the day, we want the people who haven't played to want to play the game. So work that in somehow. Because yeah, maybe there's references and Easter eggs to the video game throughout the film. There probably are, and I just didn't see them. But again, I'm not a video game player, or at least I'm not the target audience for the Borderlands game, and it's like, why don't I want to go pick up the Borderlands game and play it now and see if it's just as bad? Like anything along those lines, or maybe just as good. Like maybe that's a possibility. Make a good film, and then I'll be like, wow, I kind of want to play those characters. I want to be Krieg running around with that big hammer thing that he's got. I want to play that, or that big villain that came out at the end. I want to play against that. No, nothing in this movie makes me want to go pick up a controller and play the game. Overall, guys, I will say that Borderlands is one of the worst movies I've seen in 2024. Should have been a big, fun, blockbuster film. Big ensemble cast, a bunch of funny guys cast in this film. Should have been a good time. And yet, it's one of those movies where I'll look back on my time with it and say, I just wasted my time. Can't believe I gave it almost 2 hours of my life. Borderlands is terrible. I would highly recommend staying away from it. But those are just my opinions because that's my review for Borderlands. Guys, have you had a chance to see it yet? If you have, let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know if we agree or disagree. Maybe you're a big fan of the game and I missed something completely and you absolutely loved it. Let me know that in the comment section. But with all that said, if you like this video and you want to watch more, don't forget to hit that like button because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Alright guys, we got to the end of my Borderlands video game movie adaptation review, and I'm glad this is in my rear view because I did not have a good time watching this movie, although I did have a good time making this review. I just am glad to put it behind me. It will be something that I save till the end of August to talk about then, and then I will talk about it at the very end of the year because I will be shocked if this movie's not in my top 10 worst for 2024. It's that bad. But with that said though, guys, if you like this video and you want to check out other content on my channel, well, I've got all of my 2023 movie reviews right there, and I've got all of my 2024 movie reviews right there.